Something has begun to shift in a way that is quiet but powerful, something that is happening behind the scenes without your direct awareness, yet you may already feel a subtle change in the energy around you, a sense that something is building, something is moving toward you even if you cannot yet see what it is, and this shift is connected to your soulmate, who is no longer in the same emotional or mental space they were in before. For a long time, they may have remained distant, unsure, or even silent, choosing not to act on what they felt, choosing instead to stay within their comfort zone where things remained unspoken and undefined. OMG. Your soulmate got a phone call and cut everyone off, they said you are. But something has changed. It did not happen suddenly or without reason. It began quietly, almost unnoticed, during a moment that seemed ordinary at first. They may have been going through their usual routine, focused on their day, not expecting anything significant to happen. But then, something triggered a thought of you, unexpected, but clear. At first, they may have treated it like any other passing thought, assuming it would fade as quickly as it came. But it didn't. It stayed. And not only did it stay, it returned again later, and then again after that, each time carrying more weight than before. This is how the shift began. Not with one moment, but with repeated moments that slowly built into something they could no longer ignore. They began to notice that their mind was returning to you more frequently, not randomly, but in a way that felt connected, as if their thoughts were trying to show them something they had not fully understood before. Memories started to surface, not just isolated ones, but a series of moments that had quietly shaped the connection between you. Conversations that once felt normal now stood out in a different way. The ease of communication, the natural understanding, the comfort that existed without needing explanation, these were things they did not fully analyze at the time, but now they began to see them clearly. And with each memory, something inside them began to shift. They started to feel the difference between what they had with you and what they have experienced since. They may have compared without meaning to, noticing how other interactions felt different, less natural, less meaningful. Not because others were lacking, but because what they shared with you had a certain depth they didn't fully recognize until it was no longer present. And this realization is what started to change everything. They began to understand that what they had with you was not something ordinary, not something easily replaced or forgotten. It was something real, something that carried meaning, something that left a lasting impression even after time had passed. And once that understanding began to form, it could not be undone. They may have tried to distract themselves, to focus on other things, to return to their routine and push those thoughts aside. But it didn't work the same way anymore. Because now, the awareness was there. They could no longer pretend that what they felt was insignificant. They could no longer ignore the way their thoughts kept returning to you. The more they tried to move forward without addressing it, the more it pulled them back. And this is where the emotional shift began to deepen. It was no longer just about thinking, it became about feeling. They started to feel the absence of what you brought into their life, not just your presence, but the connection, the understanding, the way things felt when everything was natural and unforced. This feeling of absence is what creates awareness, because once someone recognizes what is missing, they cannot easily ignore it and continue as if nothing has changed. They may have started to question themselves, wondering why they didn't see it sooner, why they assumed it would always be there, why they allowed distance to grow without fully understanding what they were walking away from. These questions do not have immediate answers, but they deepen the realization that has already begun. And with that realization comes a new kind of awareness, one that changes how they see everything, not just the past, but the present as well. You may not see any of this happening directly. From your perspective, everything may still feel the same. There may be no message, no clear sign, no direct indication that anything has changed. But something has changed, and it is happening within them in a way that will not stay hidden for long. Because when realization reaches this level, when someone begins to truly understand the value of what they had, it does not remain a quiet thought forever. It grows. It becomes stronger. And eventually, it leads to something that cannot be ignored, something that moves beyond thought and into action. Right now, they are still in the stage of realization, still processing, still connecting the pieces. But they are no longer the same as they were before this shift began. Their perspective has changed. Their awareness has deepened. And the way they see you now is no longer casual or undefined. It is becoming clear, and that clarity is what will eventually guide them toward a bold step they once hesitated to take, a step that is already beginning to form even if it has not yet reached you. As this realization continues to deepen within them, it begins to move beyond simple awareness and into something far more intense, something that starts to shape their emotions, their thoughts, and even their behavior in ways they did not expect, and this is where everything begins to feel more urgent, more real, and far more difficult for them to ignore. What once appeared as occasional thoughts about you has now become something constant, something that follows them throughout their day, something that appears in quiet moments and refuses to fade the way ordinary memories usually do. They may try to continue with their routine, focusing on their responsibilities, engaging in conversations, and appearing as they normally would on the outside, but internally, there is a shift that cannot be hidden. There is a constant awareness of you, of what you meant to them, of what the connection truly was, and of what they now realize they may have lost. And this awareness is what begins to create emotional weight. Because once someone begins to understand the value of something they once overlooked, it does not remain a neutral thought, it becomes something they feel deeply. They may begin to notice how their thoughts return to you at unexpected times, not just when they are alone, but even when they are surrounded by others, even when they are engaged in something else. It becomes clear to them that this is not something temporary, not something that will simply fade with time. Instead, it feels like something that is growing, something that is becoming more important the more they try to understand it. They may begin to reflect more seriously now, not just on the connection itself, but on their own role in how things unfolded. They may question why they didn't recognize the depth of what they had when it was present, why they assumed it would always be there, why they allowed things to become distant without trying to understand what they were risking. These questions do not bring immediate answers, but they deepen the realization that has already begun, turning it into something more personal, something that carries a sense of accountability. And this is where regret begins to take shape in a more defined way. It is no longer just a vague feeling, it becomes something they can identify, something they can feel clearly. It is the understanding that something meaningful was lost, not because it lacked value, but because they did not fully see its value at the time. And once that understanding becomes clear, it creates a kind of internal tension that does not go away easily. They may try to push it aside, to focus on other things, to convince themselves that they can move forward without looking back, but it does not work the same way anymore. Because now, the awareness is there. They can no longer pretend that what they had with you was something small or insignificant. They can no longer ignore the way it felt, the way it stood out from everything else. The more they think about it, the more they realize that what they experienced with you was not something easily replaced, not something that could simply be recreated with someone else. It was something specific, something unique, something that existed because of the way you and them connected in a way that felt natural and unforced. And this realization is what begins to shift their emotions even more deeply. They begin to feel the absence of that connection, not just in a general sense, but in specific moments, in specific experiences where they notice that something is missing. Conversations may feel less engaging, interactions may feel less meaningful, and even when things seem fine on the surface, there is still a sense that something is not the same. This feeling of absence is what gives their thoughts urgency, because once someone becomes aware of what is missing, it becomes difficult to accept that absence without trying to change it. They may begin to think more seriously about what they can do now, about whether it is possible to reconnect, about whether it is too late or whether there is still a chance to express what they now understand. These thoughts bring both hope and uncertainty, because while they feel the importance of what they lost, they do not know how you will respond, they do not know whether your perspective has changed, they do not know whether the connection can be revisited in the same way. But even with that uncertainty, the feeling does not go away. In fact, it becomes stronger, because now it is tied to the idea of action. You may begin to sense something shifting at this stage, a subtle awareness that something is changing, that something is moving toward you even if it has not yet reached you. This feeling is not random. It is connected to the process they are going through, to the emotional shift that is no longer just internal but is beginning to move outward. Because once someone reaches this level of realization, once regret becomes clear and meaningful, it does not remain quiet forever. It begins to create movement, a desire to act, a need to address what has been left unresolved. Right now, they are still in the stage of feeling and understanding, but they are no longer where they were before. Their perspective has changed completely. Their awareness has deepened. And the way they see you now is no longer something they can ignore or move past. It is something that is guiding their thoughts, their emotions, and eventually, their actions in a direction that is bringing them closer to doing something they once believed they would never have the courage to do, something bold, something unexpected, something that will eventually reach you in a way that may feel sudden, but has been building within them for much longer than you realize. As this awareness continues to grow inside them, it reaches a level where it is no longer something they can quietly carry without it affecting everything around them, and this is where the emotional intensity begins to deepen in a way that feels constant, something that follows them not just in moments of silence but throughout their entire day, shaping their thoughts, influencing their mood, and slowly changing the way they see both the past and the present. What once felt like a realization has now become something much more personal, something they are experiencing on a deeper level, because they are no longer just thinking about what they lost, they are feeling the impact of that loss in a way that is impossible to ignore. They may begin to notice how often their mind returns to you, not just occasionally, but repeatedly, as if something inside them is trying to bring their attention back to something important they have not yet fully addressed. And each time it happens, the clarity becomes stronger. The memories are no longer distant or unclear, they are vivid, detailed, and emotionally connected in a way that makes them feel real again. They may recall specific conversations, specific moments where everything felt natural, where communication flowed without effort, where there was a sense of understanding that did not need to be explained. And as they revisit these moments, they begin to see them differently, not as ordinary interactions, but as meaningful experiences that carried depth and authenticity. This shift in perspective is what changes everything, because it allows them to understand what they had in a way they could not see before. They begin to realize that the connection between you was not something casual or temporary. It was something that had meaning, something that had the potential to grow into something even deeper, something that they did not fully recognize at the time. And now, seeing it from this new perspective, they begin to understand what it truly meant. This understanding brings with it a stronger emotional response, because once someone realizes the value of something after it is no longer present, it creates a sense of loss that is much more defined, much more personal. They may begin to feel that absence more clearly now, not just as a general feeling, but as something that appears in specific moments, in situations where they notice that something is missing, something that cannot be replaced by anything else. They may find that even when they are surrounded by other people, there is still a sense of something incomplete, a feeling that something important is not there in the same way it once was. And this feeling is what begins to create a sense of urgency, because once someone becomes aware of what is missing, it becomes difficult to simply accept it and move on without trying to change it. They may begin to question themselves more deeply now, not just about what happened, but about why it happened the way it did. Why didn't they recognize the value of the connection when they had it? Why did they assume there would always be time? Why did they allow things to become distant without fully understanding what they were risking? These questions do not have immediate answers, but they serve an important purpose. They bring a level of self-awareness that was not there before. And with that self-awareness comes a stronger emotional response, one that is no longer just about the connection itself, but about their own role in how things unfolded. This is where regret becomes more defined, more personal, more difficult to ignore. It is no longer just a thought, it becomes something they feel deeply, something that stays with them, something that influences how they see everything moving forward. They may begin to feel that simply understanding is not enough, that awareness without action leaves something unresolved, something incomplete. And this is what begins to shift their focus from the past to the present, from what happened to what can be done now. They may start to think more seriously about the possibility of reaching out, of expressing what they now understand, of addressing what has been left unspoken. These thoughts may still carry uncertainty, because they do not know how you will respond, they do not know whether your perspective has changed, they do not know whether the connection can be revisited in the same way. But even with that uncertainty, the desire to act begins to grow stronger. Because now, staying silent feels like repeating the same mistake, like allowing something meaningful to remain unresolved even after understanding its value. You may begin to feel something shifting at this stage, a stronger sense that something is building, that something is moving toward you even if you cannot yet see it. This feeling is not random. It is connected to the process they are going through, to the emotional shift that is no longer just internal but is beginning to move outward. Because once someone reaches this level of realization, once regret becomes clear and meaningful, it does not remain contained for long. It begins to create movement, a pull that draws them toward action, toward expression, toward doing something that reflects what they now understand. Right now, they are still in the stage of processing and feeling, but they are no longer where they were before. Their perspective has changed completely. Their awareness has deepened. And the way they see you now is no longer something they can ignore or move past. It is something that is guiding their thoughts and emotions in a direction that is slowly but surely bringing them closer to taking a bold step, one that will break the silence, one that will express what they now feel, and one that will reach you in a way that may feel unexpected, but has been forming within them for much longer than you realize. As this awareness continues to grow and settle within them, it reaches a point where it is no longer something they can simply observe or reflect on without it influencing their need to act, and this is where everything begins to shift from internal realization into something that feels active, something that begins to demand a response from them rather than allowing them to remain in a state of quiet understanding. Up until now, they have been processing, thinking, remembering, feeling, and slowly piecing together the truth about what they lost and what it meant. But there comes a moment when processing is no longer enough, when understanding something deeply creates a kind of responsibility, a sense that what has been realized cannot just be left unaddressed. And this is exactly where they are now. They are no longer just aware, they are beginning to feel the need to do something about that awareness. They may begin to notice that the thoughts they have about you are no longer passive. They are no longer just memories or reflections that come and go. Instead, they carry a sense of direction, as if their mind is not just revisiting the past, but guiding them towards something in the present. They may start to feel that there is something unfinished between you, something that was left incomplete, not because it lacked meaning, but because it was never fully understood or expressed at the time. And this feeling of something unfinished is what creates momentum. Because once someone begins to feel that something important has been left unresolved, it becomes difficult to accept that it will simply remain that way forever. They may begin to question more actively now, not just why things happened the way they did, but what they can do now to address it. Should they reach out? Should they explain what they have come to understand? Should they take the risk of stepping back into something they once walked away from? These questions become more frequent, more focused, and more difficult to ignore. And with each time they ask themselves these questions, the idea of doing nothing begins to feel less acceptable. Because now, doing nothing feels like a choice in itself, a choice to leave something meaningful unresolved, a choice to carry regret without trying to change the outcome. And this realization is what begins to shift the balance between hesitation and action. The hesitation is still there, but it is no longer as strong as it once was. It no longer has the same ability to hold them back completely. Instead, it exists alongside a growing sense of urgency, a feeling that something needs to be done, something needs to be said. They may begin to imagine what it would be like to take that step, to reach out, to finally express what they have been thinking and feeling. They may think about how the conversation might begin, what they would say, how you might respond. These thoughts may still carry uncertainty, because they cannot predict the outcome, but they also carry something else, a sense of possibility. Because now, for the first time, they are not just thinking about what was lost, they are thinking about what might still be possible. And that shift in perspective is what brings everything closer to action. At the same time, the emotional intensity behind what they feel continues to grow. They are no longer just aware of what they lost, they are feeling the weight of that loss in a way that makes it difficult to ignore. They may notice that certain moments feel incomplete, that certain experiences remind them of what is missing, that there is a constant awareness of something that is not there in the way it once was. And this feeling is what gives their thoughts urgency, because once someone feels the absence of something meaningful, it becomes difficult to accept that absence without trying to change it. You may begin to feel something shifting at this stage, a stronger sense that something is approaching, that something is moving toward you even if you cannot yet see it. This feeling is not random. It is connected to the stage they are in, to the internal movement that is now becoming external, to the decision that is slowly forming into something real. Because they are no longer in a place of passive reflection, they are in a place of active consideration. They are thinking about what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And once someone reaches that stage, action becomes inevitable. It may not happen immediately, it may still take a little time for them to fully gather the courage to act, but the direction is already clear. They are no longer moving away from the connection, they are being drawn back toward it, guided by the understanding they have gained, by the awareness that has changed their perspective, and by the realization that something meaningful should not remain unspoken. And this is where everything begins to align, where their thoughts, emotions, and intentions all start pointing toward the same outcome, a bold step, one that they once hesitated to take, one that will break the silence, and one that will reach you in a way that may feel unexpected, but has been building within them through every moment of realization, reflection, and emotional understanding leading up to this point. As this inner movement continues to intensify, it reaches a stage where the space between thought and action becomes smaller, where the distance between what they feel and what they are willing to do begins to close, and this is where everything starts to feel more immediate, more focused, and far more difficult for them to delay any longer. Up until now, they have been standing in a space of reflection and consideration, moving back and forth between awareness and hesitation, understanding and uncertainty. But now, something has shifted. The awareness they have gained is no longer something they can quietly carry without it influencing their need to act. It has become something that demands attention, something that asks for a response, something that makes silence feel heavier than expression. They may begin to feel a kind of restlessness, not chaotic or overwhelming, but steady and persistent, something that follows them throughout their day, something that makes it difficult to fully settle into anything else without their mind returning to you. And each time it returns, the same realization is there, the same understanding, the same feeling that something important has been left unresolved. This repetition is what creates momentum, because when a thought returns again and again with the same clarity, it becomes something that cannot be ignored. They may try to push it aside, to focus on other things, to tell themselves that they can wait, that they can take more time to think, that there is no urgency. But the truth is, the longer they wait, the stronger the feeling becomes. Because once someone understands the value of what they lost and feels the absence of it in a real way, it does not fade with time, it grows. It becomes more present, more defined, more difficult to ignore. They may begin to notice that even small moments bring everything back to the surface, a quiet pause, a familiar situation, a random thought, and suddenly they are thinking about you again, not just in a general way, but with clarity, with understanding, with emotion. And this constant return is what begins to shift their mindset completely. They are no longer asking themselves whether they should act, they are beginning to ask themselves when. This is a significant change, because it means that the decision to act has already been made internally, even if it has not yet been expressed outwardly. They may start to prepare themselves more intentionally now, thinking more clearly about how they want to approach this, what they want to say, how they want to express what they now understand. They may go through different scenarios in their mind, imagining how the conversation might unfold, how you might respond, how everything might change once the silence is broken. These thoughts may still carry uncertainty, but they also carry a sense of inevitability, because deep down, they know that this is something they are moving toward, not away from. The hesitation that once held them back is still present, but it no longer has the same strength. It no longer controls their actions. Instead, it becomes something they are moving through, something they are learning to face rather than avoid. Because now, the idea of not acting feels heavier than the fear of acting. They may begin to feel that if they do not take this step, they will carry this sense of regret indefinitely, always wondering what could have happened if they had expressed what they now understand. And that thought is what pushes them forward. At the same time, the emotional clarity they have gained continues to deepen. They are no longer confused about what they feel. They are no longer uncertain about what the connection meant to them. Everything is clear now. And that clarity is what gives them the confidence to move toward action, even if they do not know the outcome. You may begin to feel something stronger at this stage, a sense that something is about to happen, that something is approaching, that something is moving toward you in a way that feels close, almost immediate. This feeling is not random. It is connected to the stage they are in, to the internal decision that is now fully formed, to the action that is about to take place. Because once someone reaches this level of clarity, once they understand both the value of what they lost and their role in losing it, it does not remain internal for long. It moves outward. It becomes something real. They are now standing at the edge of that reality, where the next step is no longer something they are considering. It is something they are preparing to do. And this preparation is what makes everything feel so close, so immediate, so inevitable. The silence that once existed between you is no longer something they can maintain. It has become something they need to break, something they need to change, something they need to address. And once that realization fully settles in, action is no longer a possibility. It becomes a certainty, something that is about to unfold in a way that will reach you directly, in a way that may feel unexpected, but has been building within them through every stage of realization, reflection, and emotional understanding leading up to this moment. Now everything reaches a stage where the distance between intention and action becomes almost non-existent, where what has been building inside them can no longer remain in the realm of thought or preparation, and this is where the shift becomes undeniable, where what they have been feeling and understanding begins to move towards something real, something that will no longer stay hidden. The realization they have gone through has now settled into certainty. There is no more confusion about what they feel, no more questioning whether the connection mattered, no more doubt about the significance of what they lost. Everything is clear, and that clarity is what removes the final layer of hesitation that once held them back. They may still feel nervous, still feel uncertain about how things will unfold, but those feelings no longer have the power to stop them. Instead, they exist alongside something stronger. A sense of purpose, a feeling that what they are about to do is necessary, not just desired. They may begin to notice that their thoughts are no longer scattered or uncertain. They are focused, directed, and aligned with a single outcome. The question is no longer whether they should act, but how and when. And once someone reaches that point, action becomes inevitable. They may begin to prepare more clearly now, not just thinking about reaching out, but actively deciding how they will do it, what they will say, how they will express everything they have come to understand. They may replay different scenarios in their mind, not out of confusion, but out of preparation, trying to find the right way to communicate something that carries meaning and depth. And with each time they go through this process, the idea of taking that step becomes more real, more possible, more immediate. They may also begin to feel that the longer they wait, the heavier everything becomes, as if the delay itself is adding pressure to something that is already at its limit. Because once someone reaches this level of awareness, once they understand both the value of what they lost and the role they played in losing it, the need to act becomes stronger with time, not weaker. They may begin to feel that if they do not act now, they risk missing the opportunity entirely, that the longer they delay, the more difficult it becomes to express what they now understand. And this sense of limited time is what adds urgency to their thoughts. Not because there is a specific deadline, but because emotionally, it feels like something that should not be postponed any longer. They may find themselves returning to the same conclusion again and again, that they need to reach out, that they need to say something, that they need to break the silence that has existed for so long. And this repetition is what solidifies the decision. Because once a thought returns consistently with the same clarity, it is no longer just a thought. It becomes a decision waiting to be acted on. You may begin to feel something very strong at this stage, a sense that something is about to happen, that something is moving toward you in a way that feels immediate, almost unavoidable. This feeling is not random, it is connected to the stage they are in, to the moment they are approaching, to the fact that everything they have been processing internally is about to become something you will experience directly. Because they are no longer in the stage of reflection or preparation. They are in the stage of action. They may reach a moment where everything aligns, where the thoughts, the emotions, and the decision all come together, and in that moment, they realize that there is nothing left to wait for. They may pause briefly, not out of doubt, but out of awareness, recognizing that what they are about to do will change everything, that once they take this step, the silence will be broken and the connection will move into a new phase. And then, they act. Whether it is a message, a call, or some form of direct communication, they finally take the step they once avoided. And in that moment, everything shifts. What was once internal becomes external. What was once hidden becomes visible. What was once uncertain becomes clear. For them, there is a sense of release, not because everything is resolved, but because they have finally done what they felt they needed to do. They have expressed the truth, acknowledged what they now understand, and taken the bold step they once believed they would never have the courage to take. At the same time, there is vulnerability, because now the outcome is no longer in their control. They have opened the door, but what happens next depends on you. And this is where everything changes, because the connection is no longer defined by silence or distance, it is defined by what has been expressed and how it is received. You may experience this moment as sudden, unexpected, even shocking, especially if you were not aware of everything that has been happening on their side. But for them, this has been building for a long time. The action they have taken is not impulsive. It is the result of a process that began quietly and grew steadily until it reached this point. And now that the silence has been broken, everything that follows will move forward in a way that is shaped by truth, by honesty, and by the choices that are made in response to what has finally been revealed. To keep this content free and consistent, I'm looking for 24 friends to gift just $5 each to help hit our monthly goal of $120. Your generosity allows me to focus on the message while you help provide the means. God bless your giving. Now that the silence has finally been broken and their bold step has moved from intention into reality, everything begins to shift into a completely new phase, one where what was once hidden, uncertain, and quietly building inside them is now something visible, something shared, something that exists between both of you rather than only within them, and this is where the true impact of their action begins to unfold. For them, the moment they reached out, the moment they finally expressed what they had been holding inside, brought a sense of release, not because everything is resolved, but because they are no longer carrying the weight of unspoken truth alone. The thoughts, the feelings, the realization, all of it has now been placed into the open, and that changes how they experience everything moving forward. They are no longer in a state of wondering what they should do or whether they should act. That part of the journey is complete. They have taken the step, and now, everything that follows is no longer about internal conflict, it is about response, about what happens next, about how the connection evolves now that everything is clear. At the same time, there is a new kind of awareness within them, one that is tied to vulnerability. Because while expressing the truth has brought clarity, it has also placed them in a position where they cannot control the outcome. They may begin to feel a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty, wondering how you will respond, how you will interpret what they have said, whether you will understand the depth behind their words, or whether your perspective has changed in ways they cannot predict. This uncertainty does not erase what they feel, but it adds a new layer to the situation, one that shifts their focus from action to waiting, from expression to reception. They may find themselves thinking about you even more now, not just reflecting on the past, but considering the present, imagining how you are receiving their message, how you are processing what they have expressed, how you might respond. This stage is different from everything that came before, because it is no longer about them understanding their feelings, it is about both of you standing in a shared space of awareness, where everything has been revealed and nothing is left unspoken. You, on the other hand, may experience this moment as sudden, unexpected, even intense, especially if you were not aware of everything that has been happening on their side. The message, the action, the bold step they have taken may feel like it came out of nowhere, like something that appeared without warning. But what is important to understand is that this moment is not sudden for them. It is the result of a long process, a gradual build-up of realization, reflection, and emotional understanding that has finally reached its point of expression. And now that it has reached you, everything changes. The connection is no longer defined by silence or uncertainty. It is now defined by truth. You may begin to feel a range of emotions as you process what they have said. There may be surprise, curiosity, perhaps even a sense of emotional intensity as you begin to understand the depth behind their words. But alongside those emotions, there is also something else, clarity. Because for the first time, you are no longer guessing. You are no longer trying to understand something that feels incomplete or undefined. You have been shown the truth directly, and that truth gives you something powerful, it gives you awareness. And awareness is what allows you to respond rather than react, to understand rather than assume, to choose rather than be pulled by uncertainty. This is where your role becomes central to what happens next. Because now, the direction of everything that follows is not determined by what they have done, it is determined by how you respond to it. You are not being asked to mirror their feelings or to respond immediately out of emotion. You are being given the opportunity to see everything clearly and to decide what it means for you now. You may begin to reflect on how you feel about this connection at this stage, not just based on what it was before, but based on what it feels like now, in the present moment. You may recognize that there is still something there, something that aligns with what they have expressed, something that feels real and worth exploring now that everything is open and honest. Or you may realize that while their feelings are genuine and meaningful, your own perspective has changed, and the connection no longer holds the same place in your life. Both of these realizations are valid, because what matters now is not what existed before, it is what feels true for you now. This is what makes this stage so important. It is no longer about discovery, it is about decision. Not a rushed or pressured decision, but a conscious one, made from a place of clarity rather than confusion. As everything continues to settle, the intensity of the moment may begin to soften, not because the situation has lost its importance, but because it has gained understanding. And understanding is what allows you to move forward without hesitation, without doubt, without being influenced by uncertainty. This entire process, from their realization to their action, has led to this point. Not just for them, but for you as well. Because it has given you something valuable, the ability to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to choose what comes next based on your own truth. And that is what makes this moment not just a turning point, but a beginning of something new, defined not by silence, but by honesty, awareness, and the choices you now have the power to make. Now everything has reached a point where what once felt like uncertainty, silence, and distance has fully transformed into something clear, something grounded, and something that exists openly between both of you, and this is where the deeper meaning of everything that has happened begins to settle into your awareness in a way that is calm, steady, and no longer confusing. The bold step they took has already changed the dynamic, not because it forced an outcome, but because it removed the unknown. What was once hidden has now been revealed, and once something is revealed at that level, it cannot return to being uncertain. You are no longer standing in a place where you have to wonder what they feel or what they might do. That part of the journey is complete. They have already shown you. They have already expressed what they came to understand. And now, everything shifts into a new phase where your awareness becomes the most important part of what happens next. You may begin to notice that the emotional intensity you felt when their message first reached you is starting to change. It is no longer overwhelming or unpredictable. Instead, it is becoming something you can observe more clearly, something you can understand without being pulled in too many directions at once. This is because clarity has replaced uncertainty, and clarity always brings a sense of calm, even when the situation itself carries meaning. You may start to reflect more deeply now, not just on what they said, but on what it means for you personally. You may think about the connection as it was, how it felt when everything was active, how things shifted over time, and how you feel about it now. And as you reflect, you may notice that your perspective is not the same as it once was. Time, distance, and your own experiences have shaped how you see things, and that is natural. You are not the same person you were when everything was unfolding before, and because of that, your understanding of the connection has evolved. This is why this moment is not about going back, it is about seeing clearly what is in front of you now. You may begin to ask yourself important questions, not out of confusion, but out of awareness. What does this connection mean to you now? Does it align with who you are and what you want moving forward? Do you feel that there is still something there that is worth exploring now that everything is open and honest? Or do you feel that while the connection was meaningful, it belongs to a time that has already passed, a version of your life that no longer fits who you are today? These questions are not meant to create doubt, they are meant to bring clarity. Because clarity is what allows you to move forward with confidence, knowing that your decisions are based on understanding rather than uncertainty. At the same time, you may also begin to recognize the courage it took for them to take that step, to break the silence, to express something they once kept hidden. And while that recognition does not determine your response, it adds depth to your understanding of the situation. You are able to see not just what they said, but what it represents. The process they went through, the realization they reached, the effort it took for them to finally act. And this understanding allows you to respond with awareness rather than reaction, with clarity rather than emotion alone. As everything continues to settle, the situation becomes less about what has happened and more about what it means moving forward. The focus shifts from their action to your choice, from their expression to your understanding. And this is where your power lies. Because you are no longer in a position where you are trying to figure things out. You are in a position where you already know what has been revealed, and now you get to decide what to do with that knowledge. Whether you choose to reconnect, to explore what has been expressed, or to move in a different direction entirely, your decision will come from a place of awareness. And that is what makes it strong. Because decisions made from clarity do not carry regret. They carry understanding. This entire experience, from the moment they began to realize what they lost to the moment they took that bold step toward you, has led to this point, not just for them, but for you as well. Because it has given you something valuable, the ability to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to choose consciously. And that is what makes this moment not just an ending, but a beginning of something new, something defined not by silence or uncertainty, but by truth, awareness, and the choices you now have the clarity to make moving forward. Now everything has reached its final stage, where what once felt uncertain, emotionally intense, and filled with unanswered questions has transformed into something clear, grounded, and fully within your awareness, and this is where the deeper meaning of the entire situation begins to reveal itself in a way that is calm, steady, and no longer confusing. The bold step your soulmate took was not just about expressing what they feel. It was about bringing everything into the open so that both of you could see the truth clearly, without assumptions, without guessing, and without the silence that once kept everything undefined. And now that this truth is in front of you, everything changes, not because you are being pushed in a certain direction, but because you now have the clarity to choose your direction consciously. What once felt like distance now makes sense as space that allowed both of you to see things from a different perspective. What once felt like silence now reveals itself as a necessary pause that gave them time to understand what they lost and gave you time to step back and form your own understanding without influence. And what once felt like confusion now feels like something that has already been answered through their actions and their words. This is why this moment feels different. You are no longer standing in uncertainty. You are standing in awareness. And awareness is what changes how you experience everything moving forward. You may begin to notice that your emotions are more stable now, more grounded, more aligned with your understanding rather than driven by intensity or confusion. Not because the situation is less meaningful, but because it is no longer unclear. You know what they feel. You know what led them to this point. And you know that what they have expressed comes from a place of realization, not impulse. And this knowledge allows you to step back and see everything from a clearer perspective, one that is not influenced by assumptions or unanswered questions. This is where your role becomes the most important part of what happens next. Because now, the direction of everything moving forward is no longer determined by what they have done, it is determined by how you choose to respond to it. You are not being asked to match their emotions or to make a decision based on their action alone. You are being given the space to understand what you feel, to recognize what this connection means to you now, and to decide what aligns with your truth moving forward. You may begin to reflect on how you feel about this connection at this stage, not just based on what it was before, but based on who you are now and what you want for your future. You may realize that there is still something there, something that feels real and worth exploring now that everything is open and honest. Or you may realize that while the connection was meaningful, your perspective has changed, and it no longer fits into your life in the same way it once did. Both of these realizations are valid, because what matters now is not what existed in the past, but what feels true in the present moment. This is what makes this stage so significant. It is no longer about discovery, it is about decision. And that decision is not something that needs to be rushed or influenced by external pressure. It is something that comes from within you, from your own understanding, from your own clarity. As everything continues to settle, you may also notice a sense of calm replacing the intensity that once surrounded this situation. Not because everything is resolved in a perfect or final way, but because there is no longer anything hidden. There is no more guessing, no more wondering, no more trying to understand something that feels incomplete. There is only truth. And truth, even when it carries emotional weight, brings a sense of stability because it allows you to move forward without doubt. This entire journey, from the moment they began to realize what they lost to the moment they took that bold step toward you, has led to this point, not just for them, but for you as well. Because it has given you something valuable. Clarity. And clarity is what allows you to move forward without hesitation, without regret, and without being influenced by uncertainty. Whatever you choose next will come from a place of full awareness, and that is what makes this moment not just the end of one phase, but the beginning of another, one defined by honesty, understanding, and your ability to choose what truly aligns with you now, based on everything that has been revealed.